New satellite pictures appear to refute India's claim that it destroyed a religious school linked to the armed group Jaish-e-Mohammed in Pakistan. India had said its airstrikes hit all intended targets and killed hundreds of fighters. Ajay Shukla is a former Indian Army colonel and a columnist on strategic affairs, defence and diplomacy. Joins us now live from New Delhi. Good to have you with us. When we look at this report, how much of a disconnect is there between what the Indian government says happened and what appears to be the reality?
Well, to be fair to the Indian government, they have not been very specific in making claims beyond initially saying that a large number of militants had been killed, and then later talking about a large number of mobiles that were there transmitting from that area before the strike, which eventually were not there once the strike had gone in. A lot of the figures that you're hearing, 300 militants killed, 250 militants killed, many of those figures are based on source-based reporting, government officials whispering into reporters' ears, and do not reflect the accurate position of the government. But that having been said, there are really two dimensions to what we are talking about here. One was India's demonstration of intent to abandon strategic restraint and strike back whenever there's a terrorist attack on its soil, on its security forces, where a large number of people have been killed. Now, that aspect, which was the demonstration of intent, that has been demonstrated whether or not the targets were hit or whether the bombs missed by 100 meters, 200 or 250. The second thing, other than intent, is capability. Can you actually strike your targets? And that's where a question mark has now come in as a result of these particular satellite photographs. So intent is there, capability is still a question mark.
OK, yes, because the Indian government did say that its airstrikes had hit all intended targets, and yet it does not seem that any targets have been hit by a few pine trees. And I think there was a witness report of a crow. I mean, it doesn't seem as if any of the buildings were damaged or indeed any people were killed. But how much does it actually matter to the Indian people that there is this disconnect?
Well, you make an important point, because there's a huge domestic political dimension to this, with the general elections coming up next month. And the Indian people want to believe that the Air Force has achieved its aim, has hit its targets, just like the Pakistani people will not believe that that has indeed been the case. In the final balance, when you take a step back and look at it from the strategic point of view, it really doesn't matter whether you hit the targets or not, because there is no clarity yet on whether the government was actually trying to hit that madrasa or was merely demonstrating intent by placing the bombs 100 or 200 meters away from that. These are questions that will keep getting discussed, both in Pakistan and in India. And that's how the government of India wants it. When you're making a strategic statement, it doesn't always have to be absolutely clear what you're doing. As long as you can create the doubt in the minds of the adversary, you're achieving your strategic intent. So to that extent, we don't know whether the government of India was actually trying to hold back on casualties, to not provoke a major incident by actually killing 300 people, but to at the same time demonstrate that it would be capable of doing so if it wanted to.
OK, what do you think India might do next in this conflict? Because tensions are still riding pretty high.
Well, that's the million-dollar question. The aim of this whole issue, the aim of the airstrikes, the aim of this whole escalation from the Indian side was to compel Pakistan to crack down on terrorist groups, specifically the Jaish-e-Mohammed, which was responsible for that suicide bomb attack in Srinagar on February the 14th. That seems to be happening. Yesterday, the brother and the son of the Jaish-e-Mohammed chief were arrested. Many of its facilities were closed down by Pakistan. Pakistan says it's acting in its own interest. India is perfectly happy with that. So the objectives of the attack seem to be being achieved as we speak. So if that continues, if Pakistan continues down this path, there is no reason at all for India to escalate any further, because escalation comes with its own risks, its own unpredictabilities, and nobody knows what happens once you start going down that path. So India would be very happy to leave things as it were, provided Pakistan continues cracking down. From the Prime Minister's viewpoint, he'll be able to tell the electorate of India that, look, I compelled Pakistan to take action. I'm a strong Prime Minister. I've safeguarded Indian interests, and therefore vote for me in this election.
Ajay Shukla, very good indeed to speak to you. Thanks for joining us there from New Delhi.